which ironically is something that conservatives want every American, regardless of age, to see. A penis that will shake the earth to its very core. A penis that, if every American sees, will undoubtedly deliver a sure victory, an assured victory for the Republican Party, which is why the Democrats are so desperately trying to stop you from seeing it. That man is now, he's done a lot. He's done a lot of stuff, and he's in court over it, some of which is tax evasion. Others are irresponsible gun ownership, I believe, illegal ownership of a weapon. And most importantly, the fact that the Democratic Party and the pedophiles at the Democratic Party want to stop you from seeing his cock.
Just into CNN breaking news, the judge in the Hunter Biden case making a surprise decision after a whirlwind morning in court. Let's get to CNN's Kara Scannell, who's outside the courthouse in Wilmington, Delaware. Kara, bring us up to speed. What is the latest?
Yeah, Boris, so the judge said that she could not accept the plea agreement as it was structured. Remember, there was a plea agreement where Hunter Biden would plead guilty to 2 tax misdemeanors and then a diversion on a felony gun charge. Well, the judge taking issue with both of them, saying that on the plea agreement related to the tax charges, she was saying that this agreement as structured just had her, as what she said, a rubber stamp. It did not allow her to weigh in on whether she thought that the plea was acceptable. She had questions about that and wants both sides to brief her on that. Also on the gun diversion, she had questions about how that deal was structured because it inserted her in the process if Hunter Biden breached the terms of this agreement and the government had an issue with it. They wanted the judge to act as a neutral arbiter because they cited the political nature of this investigation and of who Hunter Biden is. So the judge saying she wasn't sure it was constitutional for her to have a role that could interfere with the Department of Justice, the executive branch's decision to bring a criminal case. So she said she wanted additional briefing on this. She told Hunter Biden, I am sorry. She said she knew he wanted to resolve this, but she said she wanted to make sure he got what he understood he was getting in terms of immunity under that plea agreement and that the diversion agreement was constitutional. So both sides will be briefing on this issue, and the judge will then have them back in court again to resolve this matter. But as it stands right now, Hunter Biden entered a plea of not guilty because he said he would only plead guilty if this plea agreement was intact. Boris?
Kara, please stand by. We also have Evan Perez with us. Evan, just a moment ago, we were talking about the back and forth, this ordeal where prosecutors walked in with Hunter Biden's defense team. They had something laid out, an agreement on these 2 federal charges for tax evasion and the gun charge. And then essentially there was a dispute over the agreement. They then went into recess, came up with a new agreement, but the judge ultimately decided it was invalid. It wasn't up to her standard.
Right, and I think at issue here for the judge is she's trying to protect Hunter Biden's rights. She's trying to make sure that whatever he thinks he is agreeing to is indeed what the government is agreeing to do. And the reason why that is in question is because the judge, as a result of the judge's questions, the prosecution admitted that there were some aspects of this that are not covered, that there are some aspects of this investigation. Remember, Boris, this is a 5-year investigation, an investigation that has spanned 3 U.S. attorneys general all the way back to 2018. We have a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney who has been held over by Joe Biden's administration to continue this investigation. It has looked at everything from money laundering, from this potential violation of the Foreign Agents Registration Act. It's looked at his, obviously, his drug issues, and of course these tax issues. And what the Justice Department was saying at this court hearing was that there is some aspect of this that is still ongoing, that is still being investigated, and that really Hunter Biden still has some legal jeopardy over. And so that's the reason why she has these concerns, because she wants to make sure that anybody who's agreeing to plead guilty, that they understand what they're pleading guilty to. Because in the end, obviously, if that is not really buttoned up, it raises constitutional questions, obviously, for the defendant. So what it appears now is going to happen is that the 2 sides are going to go back to the table and try to work out what it is that they can agree to. And then they can come back to the judge. But it appears the judge is going to ask them to put this all in court filings, and then she will bring them back to make sure that there's an agreement that she can consider to be constitutional. Boris.
Evan Perez, please stand by. Jim, obviously this is a case with immense scrutiny. It appears the judge wants every detail analyzed very, very closely.
No question, and perhaps in the interest of both parties, we're joined by now, in fact, bringing back just a few minutes later, Elliot Williams, a former prosecutor himself. So looking at this now, you heard Evan Perez's description there as the judge, in effect, looking out for Hunter Biden's interests here, that he knows exactly what he's getting out of this deal and what he's not. Do you share that reading of this?
Yes and no, because I think the judge doesn't live in a vacuum and knows that there's a tremendous congressional and media scrutiny around it, so it's not just about the defendant's rights. Now, in terms of this whole rights question in the Constitution, it's important to know what a plea deal or sort of a plea hearing is, Jim. And it's the defendant's not just saying, I'm guilty of the crime. The defendant is, number one, waiving a number of rights he has. He has the right to a trial in front of his peers. He has the right, you are waiving, or at least acknowledging that you may not be allowed to vote after being convicted, that you may not be allowed to possess a firearm, ironically, after being convicted of a crime. All of these things are rights that a defendant waives. And a judge needs to ensure, and the parties, frankly, need to ensure that the defendant is aware of those things before he says, I'm guilty. Because all of those things could jeopardize the integrity of the plea down the road and give the defendant a right to reopen it or appeal it at some point. So she is onto something. You really need to be clear that the defendant knows what, under the Constitution, he is getting rid of by agreeing to plead guilty.
Understood. Okay, so I asked you last time we spoke, just moments ago, when we thought we had a deal, whether you thought the penalties Hunter Biden is facing are in line with how these crimes are generally charged. You said yes. When you look at the judge's involvement in this plea deal, of course, there's an enormous amount of attention, which you cite here on this, so probably taking a little bit of extra care. But do you see the judge doing anything kind of out of line as they discuss this, or does it seem on the up and up and as one would expect?
Right now it does seem to be up and up. When we talk about out of line, the problem is that there isn't really there's a template for firearms and tax cases. Those exist. There isn't really a template for the son of the current president being charged and pleading guilty to a crime. And I do think that every party involved with this, including the court, is being extra careful, or ought to be extra careful, to recognizing the maelstrom that will certainly follow if something gets wrong in how this matter is resolved.
So ideally, you want it to be everyone equal under the law as well, but we know the scrutiny that we're living in right now.
Genuinely confused on what exactly they're accusing him besides tax evasion being cool. I mean, tax evasion and an unlawful possession of a gun. I mean, those are pretty significant charges. It's understandable, and he should be, I think he should be tried. And the cock thing is not, I mean, it's all jokes aside, dude, dude.
In Delaware, Kara, obviously the judge in this case coming out and saying that parts of this deal contain non-standard terms. She described it as unusual. Walk us through what that was like in court and what specifically she was scrutinizing that she found unusual.
Right, so she was focusing when she made that comment on the gun diversion agreement, saying that in other instances where she's had...
Yeah, back to Hunter Biden's penis, which ironically is something that conservatives want every American, regardless of age, to see. This was proven by Marjorie Taylor Greene, unironically going to a fucking FedEx Kinko's and printing out Hunter Biden's actual penis pictures and showing it in a congressional hearing. I'm not even fucking joking about this, even a little bit, okay?
Cases where someone was on drugs and they had purchased a firearm, that was usually brought as a false statement case. That is something that we know that prosecutors, according to our sources, were looking at in this case as part of their plea negotiations. They had worked it down into this diversion for a possession charge, which is a serious felony. But this was an issue she had questions about, of whether it was constitutional, because there was a ruling in the Third Circuit on another case, and a question of whether this law that he is pleading to is constitutional. unconstitutional. So she was saying, what if this is eventually decided that this law is unconstitutional? What happens here? Maybe you should have brought this as a false statement. But both sides saying that this was what they had agreed to, and then the judge was just pushing on this point. They said that they would accept it, that this was a contract between the parties, that they would both agree to the terms of that. Biden's lawyer said that even if the law that this agreement was found unconstitutional, it wouldn't matter. They would still abide by the terms of this. But this judge obviously having a lot of concerns about the constitutionality of the structure of these agreements as well as the substance. She was saying that it looked like they were trying to do form over substance today because of the eagerness to get this done. But she said she wanted to make sure that this was done appropriately. And as Evan said, she is looking here to protect the interests in many ways of Hunter Biden, to make sure he knows exactly what he is pleading guilty to and exactly what the terms are of this deal, what the prosecution could do or not, because of course there could be changes in the administration, and it's not.
Am I weird for not giving a singular shit about this? Like a story of a rich politician's son doing something weird or illegal is the farthest thing from surprising, and hogs and libs are both going insane about it. So uninteresting. Am I crazy? I mean, he should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Like, I think the reason why Republicans lose their minds about it, even though it's like ironically about better gun control, which they are wholeheartedly against, is because it happens to be Hunter Biden, who they believe is their key to destroying the legitimacy of Joe Biden. I don't know why, but like, this is a hypocrisy story. Isn't it because of Ukraine, or have I been reading pro-Russian reporting? Wait, what? Of Ukraine? No.
Necessarily clear there's where anyone else would look at this. This investigation was under both the Trump administration and the Biden administration. It's been many years in the works, but there is a lot of politicalization around it.
There's no charges on Hunter Biden as it pertains to Burisma, if that's what you're saying.
Griff, thank you so much. Let's bring in today's panel now. Harris and I are joined by Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce, director of the Tech Policy.
The judge denied the plea deal because she knows how important it is to Hunter Biden to smoke crack while in the presence of a firearm, and if he pleads guilty, he will no longer be able to smoke crack legally in the presence of a firearm, as he will not be able to possess one. They also want to posture as though his behavior is a national security risk. Yeah, I don't know why that would constitute a national security risk when he's like not exactly in the room when any decisions are being made, and they haven't been able to like show that, successfully prove that like Hunter Biden can move the needle on any kind of legislation or executive action that Joe Brandon has ever taken. So not exactly certain as to why they're making such a big stink about this beyond it's hypocritical, right?
Policy Center at the Heritage Foundation, Kara Frederick, and host of Making Money on Fox Business, Charles Payne. Charles, we've had an explosive morning, and now these developments, which frankly raises so many more questions than answers. What do you make of it all?
First of all, I'm like, I got to become a lawyer all over again. It's like, I had to put on my lawyer hat. I didn't even know the FAR. I'm glad I heard Griff mention what it stood for. Here's what I think the angle I was looking at it, we all kind of anticipated, was just this notion that this was a sweetheart deal to begin with, right? And to remind folks, the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act of 1993 was ushered into law by then Senator Joe Biden, chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, which made this Form 4473 a key part of the background check. Lying on that form is a felony punishable by up to 10 years in prison. Bottom line. That was already a big headline. So now the sweetheart deal apparently had a cherry on top. Immunity. Wow, it gets even sweeter for the Biden family. But how brazen do you have to be? How arrogant do you have to be to let this play out in front of the American public where so many people have gone to prison for far less?
Yeah. Tammy, I want to bring you in. You're always so thoughtful and so cognizant of so many details. And part of what I find so frankly horrifying about this case, as someone who has spent hundreds of hours in federal prisons looking across the table at average Americans who were serving time for a fraction of what Hunter Biden has verifiably been accused of here, is the level of detail. For over 6 years that he either failed to file tax returns or when doing so, liked to claim things like his sex club dues, his call girl payments, his daughter's Columbia University tuition, the daughter that he recognized, that is. And when the tax division of the DOJ, when those supervisory and special agents referred, it's not just this one felony that we're talking about that everyone continues repeating. It's 6 felonies, actually, and 5 misdemeanors that were serious charges that he's facing decades in prison. And then after that, to learn that people whose salaries are paid by our tax dollars let the statute of limitations run, prevented search warrants from being executed, prevented this from being investigated further. To watch that smug face go in and out of a courtroom when average Americans who work hard all know someone that served time for so much less. I know a woman on chemo who didn't get the benefit of a plea deal of a misdemeanor. She got a felony for $35,000 of alleged tax evasion. He was accused by the DOJ of $17.3 million of tax evasion. What is fair in this? Help these viewers understand why they should be outraged, Tammy.
Well, I think also they should be pretty happy today. Is that because with everything that you've noted, we expected, and everybody seemed to expect, the media expected this to just go on through. This was going to be a simple thing. It was going to take 30 minutes, that it was normalized. And when his actions were not just his smug look, but an attitude of doing things. I do
love when Fox News turns into like prison abolitionists simultaneously while they're still advocating for harsher punishments. Like Fox News turning into like a fucking Angela Davis ass like our prison's obsolete whenever Trump is in the crosshairs, or when they're using the 2-tiered criminal justice system and how fucked up that is whenever they're like Hunter Biden should go to jail permanently. It's so sick. Like, bro, we know what other kind of content and commentary you guys do, you know what I mean? Like, you're mad about tax evasion, which I think is bullshit, by the way. I mean, Hunter Biden should be punished for tax evasion. But you also want to abolish the fucking IRS. Like, what are you talking about?
In the open, expecting no problems. Americans, of course, sometimes what's taken into consideration is not just the crime that you do, but the intention behind it. If you're arrogant about it, if you knew what you were doing was a problem, or if you were drunk, you didn't know, or whatever. But even back and forth, the nature of what you're doing is based on the kind of treatment you're expecting to get, or the kind of treatment you're not going to get. So this is what is the major problem. This is a microcosm of the major problem in this country right now, is who is this country serving? Is there, it's now almost like a little bit of a cliche, but it's true about a 2-tiered system of justice. The IRS was crowing the other day that, okay, we'll stop making surprise visits at regular Americans' houses because they owe us a little bit of money. And, so that's supposed to make them, good guys. But this is what the American people see. The American people, no matter what they do for a living, understand fairness. This is about fair play. So many things in this country, about sports, about the nature of politics, about prison time, about reform. And the only thing this guy's not wearing is a tutu at this point, is like dancing into the courtroom and flipping off America in general because of the absurdity of what it is we're facing. This judge's actions today in the current situation is good for the country. They talk, it might be a trial. Well, you know what? For a lot of Americans, it is a trial. Or sometimes they plead to something that only gives them 50 years in jail.
Bro, this is literally how liberals are talking about the Trump. This is how liberals talk about the Trump cases. Like, this is the same network that goes, if this can happen to Trump, it can happen to you. Okay? Like, what do you mean? It's just, I mean, it's not surprising. Everyone is just like fucking personally invested in their own. It's not. Yeah, keep licking. Acting like she wasn't just trying to bite my jewelry. Immediately, as soon as I go, she starts licking it. She's like, oh, I wasn't trying to bite it. I was just She's so mushy. $15 years for taxes is crazy. Yeah, I think it's fucking ridiculous. I think our carceral state is disgusting. I am in favor of avoiding prison as best as you can. Like, I think it should be a last resort in so many circumstances. You know what I mean? Oh.
Is good news, and it's perhaps because of the conversation, because Americans were shocked, the system was shocked, and this cannot continue on. So good for that judge, good for us that it didn't just get pushed on through, and good for the future that we now see that this is how the system should work.
And the landscape that Tammy just described, Kara, you know, it includes our, again, tax dollars paying for 87,000 new IRS agents. But that's against the backdrop of the tax division manual, which demands that if the elements of a felony can be proven, you cannot charge or let plea to a misdemeanor. So to that point, the flagrant cavalier quality that this case seemingly has been handled isn't this like a fucking lawyer, this woman? Like 98% of American court cases end up with a plea bargain, and almost like, and that in many respects, in many instances, absolutely does take felonies and turn them into misdemeanors. What the fuck is she saying? What? Of us, believe me, do not get afforded that generosity is made all the more difficult to stomach.
Exactly. And here I'm looking at all this coverage and I'm thinking, okay, are the wheels of justice finally turning? So I completely agree with Tammy. It looks like our system, which one of the central tenets of our system is equal application of the law in America. It appears that it is working today, which we've been a little worried about that actually being the case.
Why are you licking the mic stand? Stop licking the mic stand, weirdo.
In the past few months. But I do want to come back to what Tammy said too, you know, the smug look, the fact that they've not just trotted him out, especially in the courtroom, but they let Hunter take positions at state dinners. They take him to Ireland and he's glad-handing, you know, with people. So I see that. And to me, like you said, it's a slap in the face to everyday Americans. This man should be hiding. He should be keeping his head down because we know that the confluence of evidence indicates some wrongdoing here. So why are they just brazenly saying, here, fly on Air Force One, here, come to all our state dinners and our vacations? That to me is something that I think Americans are seeing, and they recognize it's a problem. Hopefully, we come to a resolution that is, frankly, more American.
I want to pick up on the state dinner was made.
Yeah, when she says we need a resolution that's more American, they're like, throw the book at him and kill him. She's like, that's the more American resolution, brother. He needs to be under the prison. After spending such a long time talking about how ridiculous the criminal justice system is, where like a woman undergoing chemotherapy went to prison for fucking tax evasion. Like, yeah, we also need to, you know, execute this man immediately.
All the more, sorry, excuse me for a second, just to finish this thought. The presence at the state dinner was made all the more striking because the Attorney General was in attendance too. Right. And as you talked about the flying across the country, you know, as he failed to pay his tax returns and lied on them, he also flew across the country on a private jet to claim to an Alabama judge that he didn't earn enough money to pay child support. Harris.
Oh, and I'm sorry for cutting in, Emily. I just wanted to pick up on something that you said, Tammy, because this really is about the American people.
Yeah.
And I love the...
I have to describe something really funny here, but failing to pay child support, unlawful gun possession, and tax evasion are three of the most Republican divorced dad charges you could ever be hit with. If this is not eating away at like 90% of the Fox News boomer audience, I don't know what, like this is, they're literally going to make Hunter look like an icon. It's like notoriously the top three worst offenses that Republicans engage in. They're like, yeah, half of our audience should be under the prison, actually.
Fact that you can see through the, the forest, the thick forest of trees to some daylight, that forensically this is being shed today. The people can see that sunlight just cleaning everything out. And I also agree, and I said particularly the liberal media,
hold on,
we all went into this day thinking that this was going to be one and done really quick. However, that mantra was still being touted 2 hours ago as we were watching them walk into a courtroom. What had changed was somebody on his legal team had done something they shouldn't do. Somebody who's accused, a young woman accused of pretending to be somebody else to try to get some evidence, kept out of the case. And those types of things the judge is taking a look at. So it's not anybody's opinion but hers that counts. Judge Marianne Norioka.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday.
It seems like they're just mad that more Republicans can't get these kinds of amenities, from the legal system. I don't really understand. I mean, let justice be served. I think it's understandable to be critical if they're critical of the two-tier justice system. It's odd when it's literally the Fox News brigade doing it, because it's peppered in between the exact opposite narrative and the exact opposite rhetoric deployed when defending Donald Trump. You know what I mean? This is literally in between coverage where right at the same hour and the same panel is quite literally doing the exact opposite rhetoric for Donald Trump. It's just odd. I know I said avoid hour. I've said all the trigger words. At the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. Jesus Christ, you guys are annoying. Oh my God, I can't even communicate using the normal words I normally use without all you motherfuckers losing your shit.